Welcome to the Time Capsule Show, where we explore life in the 21st century through the eyes of people just like you and me. I'm Joenrhuz.
And I'm Joerenz.
And today we have WWE producer Ryan Cassella. Welcome, Ryan.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, we're happy to have you too. Thank you so much for being here. So can you just tell us more about what you do? You seem to have a really cool job, especially working in media, especially with the WWE. So can you just tell us more about that?
Sure. So the quickest way to say what I do is I'm a content creator for WWE. So the things you see on Monday Night Raw or Friday Night SmackDown, or maybe with one of our international distributors, that's the kind of content that I'm responsible for producing, along with a very big and talented team. I'm just one guy of many. So if you watch a pay-per-view and you watch a hype video, or maybe you've seen a promo in between ad breaks, those are the kinds of things that I would be responsible for creating. So that's the simple explanation for what I do as a producer.
Wow. So is it you creating them like with your own hands, or do you have a whole team that you work with to make those?
So it's definitely a whole team. So as a producer can mean a lot of different things depending on what TV studio you work for or what film studio you work for. In my case, my primary job is creating the original story. So I do plenty of editing, audio and video. And then we have an incredible team of post-producers, audio engineers, video post-producers, and we all work together to create these pieces that you see go live every week.
Wow.
Wow, that's incredible. So how did you always know you were going to work for the WWE or like to work in like content production?
Absolutely. No to both. Absolutely not. So my background is I'm actually a political psychology major. I went to a liberal arts college out in California, figured I'd work in government, maybe on a political campaign. And a light bulb went off maybe about 6 months after graduation. I'd always done student film and student theater, mostly on the performance side versus the production side, and enjoyed entertaining. I always enjoyed being in that realm. And I thought, well, maybe I could make a living creating content. And one thing led to another. And long story short, my first real paying gig was with WWE, and it's the kind of company that's offered opportunity after opportunity. I certainly didn't begin doing what I'm doing now. My first job was as a media librarian, so archiving. We were still on tape at that point, so a lot of organizing tapes and going through footage. And opportunity came, and here I am now. So as a producer, so it was a long journey, but it's been a lot of fun.
Wow, that's incredible. And I can definitely relate to you. So in college, I studied mathematical physics. I had more of a pre-med route, but now I work in media as well. So it's kind of crazy that you don't necessarily need that media background in college to work in any aspect of media for the most part.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think technology is changing industry so rapidly, and the media industry is probably right there at the top. So even some of the things that I was learned or trained on over a decade ago are pretty obsolete now. So it's kind of interesting that, and I've seen this plenty of times with folks who work in this industry. You have people with college majors or training in all different kinds of disciplines. So it's just one of those industries that seems to attract people from a lot of different walks of life.
Definitely. So what would you say is your favorite part about your job?
It's a vague answer, but the creativity. I get to play every day. I get to live in my own world of make-believe, and I get to create, I get to help create characters and storylines. And it really is this whole world. And I know folks that work in production on a lot of different things, whether it be an action film or reality TV, or, there's obviously so many different avenues now for content creation. And it's hard for me to find another industry that allows the level of creativity I'm given. It makes my job a lot of fun.
So let's say that you stuck with that government route that you had back in your college days. Do you think that you could have still exercised this creativity in political campaigns or any sector of government?
I think there would have been a level to that, particularly if I ended up on the communication side. Maybe it would have been speech writing or creating digital content for prospective campaign, but it's hard to imagine this level of creativity. Maybe, who's to say, but it is kind of hard to see that happening in another realm.
If you were pursuing a different path, let's say it wasn't in media, let's say that you never even considered politics back then, what would you be doing and why would you be doing it?
That's an excellent question. You know, man, I don't think I've ever really questioned, I never really thought about that. I figured, when college ended, it was going to be the political game, and then this media opportunity came up, and I just kind of ran with it. But if I wasn't in either of those two worlds, where would I ended up? Ah, I'm at a loss. Something, I would say, maybe something in writing. I still think I'd be in communications one way or another. I really do. I don't know exactly what that would look like. Consulting or marketing. I'm not really too sure, but I think it'd still be something in the communications realm.
So something so creative for sure, right?
Yeah, it's hard for me to see. And I mean, I grew up around people, particularly my parents and just people that were close to me, who worked in creative fields, or at least had a job where they got to make things for a living. And I think that had a very big impression on me in terms of what I wanted to do with my life and what I wanted to do for a living. Yeah.
Question: when you got out of college, did you feel that you had everything together? Was there a part of you that felt lost, like, what the hell am I going to do with my major? What do I want to do with my life?
Big time. I spent a year after college. I remember talking to my parents when I was 18, and I was getting the college acceptances, and I was very excited about the future. And I thought, I still really don't know what I want to do with my life. This might be a good opportunity to take a year off and just work a job and figure things out, so I'm not really wasting my money and time in college. And my parents are pretty frank with me. They said, listen, that sounds like a great idea. We can help you go to school now. We can't promise you that's going to be the case a year or two from now. So you might want to take this opportunity while it's available to you. I was fortunate to have financial aid and scholarships, which certainly helped as well. But I was like, well, I probably shouldn't miss out on this window to get additional financial support for my continuing education. So let's go to school and hopefully figure things out. But yeah, I remember getting my degree and being like, all right, that was nice. What happens next? I really don't know. And at that point, that's what I figured it'd be, a campaign or working in politics. And so I was doing some volunteer work out of school and trying to figure things out. And the media thing, just like I said, the light bulb went off about 6 months in, and got an internship, and the rest is history, as they say.
Wow. What is one advice you would give your younger self if you could go back in time to that college graduate that felt lost? What would you tell yourself?
It takes time. Be patient. You have your whole life ahead of you. You have your whole career ahead of you. One of the things I learned probably around that time in my life is figuring out what you want is also about figuring out what you don't want. So there's a bit of a process of elimination when it comes to figuring out your career and your future. That's what I tell myself.
So have you ever found that your background and everything you've studied in government, has it ever played a role or like helped you in certain aspects of your job now?
I think more overarching, I went to a liberal arts college, so there was a big emphasis on being well-rounded, taking courses that weren't necessarily in your wheelhouse, getting a little uncomfortable and learning about things you necessarily wouldn't learn about. I remember taking a calculus class or an econ class, things that necessarily my brain wasn't really well adapted for, but I found interesting in certain ways, and I found ways to grow intellectually. And I think that overarching message in my college career was the most helpful. Like, we're going to give you a lot of the soft skills as a communicator, as an organizer, as a problem solver, to help you in whatever you end up doing in life.
Yeah, it's really good. Like, you know what? It's like, I feel like liberal arts it's something that's been so underrated. Like, you have very important fields like STEM, and then you've got fields like business. But I feel like most people don't think enough about like liberal arts and how it sort of opens your mind up to all of these sort of different things, and how it plays into different facets of all different jobs and careers. Sort of like how math finds its way to seep in, even though some people like to like run away from math.
Agree completely. And I would add to that I think this goes back to earlier when I was talking about how quickly a lot of these industries are changing now because of technology. And if you get out of school with a degree and you really think that's going to put you in a career field, that's not necessarily preparing you for all those skills you'll need for your day-to-day job. So I don't think it's the worst thing in the world to have an undergraduate degree that focuses more on those soft skills, as long as you have a path forward into your career and have a way to train and figure out the specifics of your job. And I think there are a lot of companies out there who are willing to give people the opportunity to learn on the job. I think that's part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. So we're now at the segment of the show we like to call Past, Present, and Future, where we'll be exploring 3 different periods of your life. So I have to ask, how do you see yourself now? How does this compare to the person you were 5 years ago? And how do you think things are going to be for you in 5 years?
Wow. All right. Loaded question.
Take your
So
time.
present. Yeah. 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 So am I going present, future, past, or present, past, future?
Whatever order you prefer.
Yeah.
Wherever you want to tell the story.
Okay. All right. Okay, cool. So I guess we'll start with present. Happy with my career, excited about my day-to-day job, love to be in a creative industry, love the people I work with, love the content that I get to create. Past 5 years ago, that was kind of an interesting point in my life. So a little additional information here. This is actually my second go round with WWE. So I started with WWE maybe a year or two after college. I was there for 5 to 6 years. And then my then partner, now wife, got an amazing opportunity to work out west in Portland, Oregon. And I had family out there, and I thought, oh, okay, well, this has been a great run. Maybe it's time for a new adventure. And that started an almost 4-year around the world globe-trotting experience. It started on the West Coast, went to Australia, went to Canada, and then eventually found my way back to Stamford, Connecticut in the WWE offices about 4 years later. So it was a fun little journey that I took that started about 5 years ago. Actually more than that. And I'm doing the numbers and feeling my age. It was probably about 7 or 8 years ago that whole journey started. So I guess that would have been my past self 5 years ago. Like, oh my God, what am I doing? I'm leaving this career and I'm taking these big risks. And it was a big jump for me. That's for sure. Leaving everything that I knew and was comfortable with. But I felt like that 5 years or 4 to 5 years was an incredible experience and a lot of growth in a lot of different ways for me. And just, it let myself know that no matter what situation I'm thrown into, I can probably figure out a way to make a living and enjoy my life. And I think that was a pretty big lesson learned. And then future self, 5 years from now, I love the work I do. I'd love to keep doing it and just take on more of a leadership role, a managerial role, which is starting to come on with my career now, which is great, kind of training and teaching that next generation of producers and editors. And loving the work I do. Maybe doing a little bit more traveling, a little hard with COVID right now, but it'd be nice 5 years from now if my job encompassed a little bit more of actual physical in-person shoots and getting to do a little bit more of that. Because it's nice to leave the office every once in a while and meet some new people and learn some new things.
Wow, that's so cool. I mean, you need to tell us more about these travel experiences that you have. I mean, when COVID restrictions die down, what is the first place you want to travel to internationally?
Oh, that's a good. Yeah, I was going to say, I have been lucky enough to get in the car and do some great domestic road trips this past year as COVID's gone on, obviously safely and getting tested and taking all the proper precautions. But internationally, I have a buddy who's lived in London for 5 or 6 years now, a very close friend. And for whatever reason, it's never worked out where I could go there and say hi to him. So I'm hoping when this thing clears up, international travel's permitted, that would probably be my first destination, is to see him.
Nice. Yeah, there's a lot of great things to do there in London. We got Big Ben. You got those amazing tour buses they have there. So many great things, I think.
The Royal Palace.
Oh, duh. Is that so?
Yeah, I think so. It's a big city with a lot to do. I saw Buckingham Palace out the back of a taxi car. So that's been the extent of my tourism in England. We were actually there for a WWE related shoot. Probably about 6 months before COVID started. Actually, we were on our last big international tour and covering some stuff there. And so, yeah, but that wasn't really much of a vacation. It was just kind of a hop in the car and get to the next show date. So I didn't get to enjoy myself too much.
Well, we can consider it a workcation, I guess, right? A mix of both, best of both worlds.
Yes, I've had a lot of those this last year. Spent some time in Florida. We're actually currently in Michigan with my wife's in-laws, who've been cool enough to have us, hang out in their house. And it's COVID has opened a lot of eyes, I think, for a lot of people in terms of flexibility of work and where we can get our stuff done. It's been a real eye opener.
Definitely. So you mentioned something that's been so recent that's affected so many lives, COVID. So during these times in COVID, I'm sure many people have had to adjust and have had to live their lives differently. So what principles do you live your life by?
That's a very good question. Be authentic, be good to the people you care about, work hard.
Mhm.
Well, well said.
And that's true. It's like I feel like those are like values that some people have like taken for granted, because it's like very those kind of those, like, people like to say that those kind of words of advice are like maybe like simple or cliche, but I feel like those are so grounded. They're very important. You forget those kinds of things, especially with the world we live in today with social media. People kind of fabricate their like lives and such. So like being authentic is hard. Just working hard is like maybe something people have forgotten during these like sort of this generation that's becoming more and more encaptured in the internet and technology.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment of the way things are these days. Yeah, it's hard to know what's real and what's not at times, and certainly a lot of people spend a lot of time constructing virtual beings of themselves, or whatever you want to call it. But that's definitely the world we live in to a certain extent.
Yeah, there's just less BS. I think when you're being authentic, there's less lies to keep up with.
Yeah.
I think when you're just being yourself, literally the world just seems easier to live in.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's the path of least resistance, if nothing else.
Yeah, exactly.
So, oh, I just remembered the question I meant to ask earlier where I had a brain fart.
That's impressive. That's an impressive recall.
10 minutes later.
My God.
I wonder what triggered it.
Okay, so with the WWE, I imagine it's changed so much over the years. Because I remember as a kid, I think the last time that I watched it was when I think The Rock was still wrestling and all that. How would you say that
Sure.
it's changed over the years, and how do you see things going forward with it? Like, what kind of things can people expect?
When I started with the company, so this would have been about 2008, the company was really making a pivot from that Attitude Era to more of a family-friendly product, or more of a product that had a little something for everyone, I think. And that was the idea, to really attract a larger audience base. And I think that's still really the goal of the company, 12, 13 years later, is to really create an entertainment product that everyone can connect with on some level. Whether it be one of our weekly shows, or maybe you're just a pay-per-view watcher, maybe you're into one of the reality shows that we have, or maybe it's the documentary series. So I think the idea is that we've created this universe, and I think this is becoming such a big thing in media rights. Certainly Marvel is probably the best example of this, right? You create a world, you create a cast of characters, and you can get just about anyone to invest in that cast of characters using a certain media tool or a certain media product. And I think WWE has been right on board with that. If it's a world that's really been created since the get-go. I think it's been a vision of theirs for a long time, and it showed how they've been ahead of the game media-wise. And certainly now, with things going to streaming and content being carved up onto so many different platforms, you really have to have a home almost everywhere, right? You can't just have a TV show every week. You have to have a presence on YouTube, and you better have talent that understands social media, and you better be where the eyeballs are. And certainly when it comes to the younger crowds, a lot of them aren't watching terrestrial TV. They're not watching conventional TV, right? It's a YouTube channel they're really into, or whatever's on their smartphone that day. So I think the future of WWE, and I think the future of any successful media outfit, is creating this universe that has a home on any and all media platforms.
That's so true. And there's definitely this huge shift towards digital as opposed to linear in media. And when, I've seen so many upfronts in this month, because it's that season, and there's this huge leaning towards investing more into streaming services, because that's where the new things are. Like linear is going down, digital is going up, and especially with COVID, I think that really was a catalyst for that shift towards investing more into digital platforms.
I think that was definitely the direction things were headed, and have been headed for over a decade. But there's no doubt that COVID sped up that process, probably by years, if not decades. I mean, it really sped up that process.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to be said. It's not just about being where people are. In the case of digital, it's also the metrics. I mean, the measurements that an advertiser can get from a social media post or a streaming platform versus a traditional, over the TV ad is monumental. I mean, you can drill down to a very specific demo depending on what you're selling or what message you're trying to get across, right? And it's completely revolutionizing how we create content, how we distribute content. And I kind of feel like I'm going into grad school mode now because you guys really got my interest peaked, because this is what I studied when I went back to school. So this is right in my wheelhouse, and I love talking the industry as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, the industry is so amazing. I come from a science background, and I'm so happy to have had this media opportunity in the time of the pandemic. And it's always changing. One thing that I've learned through media and talking to different people, networking, it's never boring because it's always changing pace. There's going to be slow and fast days, but other than that, there's always going to be new headlines. There's always going to be new things that you have to keep up with. So you always have to be on your toes in media.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's fun. I mean, I think one of the coolest things about a job is to have a job that's changing and is never the same day to day. I think most people like a certain level of dynamicism to their day-to-day job, and it's nice to be in an industry that really embraces that, and it really has to, right? I mean, you have to stay on top of the technology and where people are moving.
Definitely.
Absolutely. So speaking of like this fast-paced world that we live in, sometimes everything just seems to go around so fast, so much that we forget about sometimes the things that are just around us. So what would you say you're grateful for in your life?
Oh, family and friends for sure. I mean, life is so much better when you get to share it with people that you care about and have a good time with. I mean, I think that's what makes it worth it. And that extends to the workplace too. I mean, I work, I certainly consider my coworkers family to a certain extent. A lot of them I've known for years and have built some incredible relationships there. And I think working in creative industry as well, because it's so collaborative and there's a certain level of personal communication that I think you have no choice but to develop kind of like next level relationships with your coworkers. But that I always go back to that when I think about what I'm grateful for, is just the people in my life who've, supported me and taught me and been there for me. It's just, it's forever blessed for the people that I get to share my life with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's always important to have that foundation, that support group to kind of pick you up when you're feeling down, and also to celebrate the moments that you deserved and that you achieved in your life. So now we're up to the part of the show.
Absolutely.
Now we're up to the part of the show that is our title, Time Capsule. Now I'm going to ask you, if you were to leave something in a time capsule for people to dig up 100 years later, what would you put in there and why?
The first thing that comes to mind is a beta tape, like a digi beta tape, because whenever I see one of those big blue cases or big black cases on a shelf, I think about, my start in the industry and how far my journey professionally has come and how far the industry has come and how far technology and time has come. So I guess that would be my contribution, a big dented digi beta tape from, like 1998.
Interesting.
What is the, I actually don't know what a digi beta tape is. I might need to Google it for a second.
Okay. So a long time ago, when people used to watch, their movies on tape, there was a competition between two competitors. There was the VHS, which we all know and love, and there was the beta tape. And the beta tape was a little better quality, but it was a little more expensive, it was a little bigger and a little more cumbersome, and VHS ended up winning the race for the consumer. However, on the professional side of things, when it came to recording media, cataloging media, archiving media, a lot of that ended up, if not on the film reel, for us digital folks capturing stuff on tape, it went usually on a digitape, a beta tape, which then became HD tapes, which is now for most of us just a digital file.
Oh, wow.
Look, yeah, we just looked it up and it looks so similar to VHS, like the way it looks.
Yep. Just a little bigger and funkier. But yeah, so years ago, that was the race. And it's more of an antique now at this point, or an archive to a different era. But that would be my contribution to the time capsule.
Wow. That's so crazy. Wait, so would you just leave like an empty like tape, or would you like have a video recorded on it or something? Is that how it works?
I didn't even think about that. Yeah, I guess there should be something fun on the tape, right? Although I guess if someone dug it up in a time capsule, they might not necessarily be able to see what was on it if they couldn't find an actual beta player to play it on. So yeah, let's just make it a nice blank tape. Let's keep it simple. A blank digi beta tape in the case, the tape and the case. I want both. I don't want people to be disappointed they open up the case and nothing's there.
Good point.
Makes sense. Oh,
It's so fun.
that's so crazy. I almost forgot about VHS tapes and digitapes until up until today. Like everything's pretty much like CD. Even
It's
CDs are
easy.
gone.
Yeah. Like laptops don't even have the CD trays anymore.
Yeah.
CDs, DVDs. Yeah, it's just this whole the physical technology, and I think that's why vinyl. Just to go off on another like random tangent, but I think that's why vinyl has become so in vogue now, right? Because it's physical, it's tactile, it's something you can put on your shelf. It's something real, and I think that is something that's been lost a little bit in media and communications as a whole with everything going digital. It is kind of nice still to have a physical thing to hang on to.
Do you think we're moving too quickly with these changes? Like you said, the vinyl records are something physical they can hold on to. It feels real, it's palpable, but then everything else is kind of stored
Yeah.
into this online universe. Do you think there's like pros and cons to that?
I mean, the pros obviously are it's much easier. We can travel lighter. It takes up less space. It's greener in a lot of ways. So the pros far outweigh the cons. But I think there is going to be a little bit of a blowback for the younger generations of, well, I don't have anything. Like everything's in the cloud or everything's online or everything's in the zip file. Like I want like a physical thing, even if it's just something to put on a shelf in my house. So I think there is going to be a recommitment. I don't know what it's going to look like beyond a vinyl record or, a picture frame, whatever it may be. But I think there is still this longing for like the analog past and having a connection to that.
For sure. And I feel like if everything's on the cloud, it makes it more vulnerable to be lost, right? I mean, in one click of a button, you kind of can just delete everything, or God forbid it's hacked or something, right?
Yes.
Sure, I guess that's why all the money now is in cybersecurity and digital backups. And I mean, like at WWE, like we're digital at this point, right? All of our archives, all of our older footage, everything's been digitized. But we have a backup of a backup of a backup because you have to these days, right? Well, you can never just you never want these things to just disappear forever.
For sure. It's a whole business.
Yeah, that's true.
Yep, exactly. A whole another industry. One industry goes when the physical things leave, and thanks to the digital revolution, we've created new jobs, new industries. So it's just all part of that cycle, I suppose.
I agree. So is there anything else that you'd like to add? Any like final advice for people who might see themselves in your story?
Well, if I'd say anything, I would just say be open to new opportunities, be bold, don't be afraid to take risks. If you try something and you don't like it, that's okay. That's part of living and part of figuring out what you want out of life. So be ready to not immediately fall in love with the first thing you do, right? Sometimes it takes time to figure out what you want to do with your career and your future.
That's really well said. Well, Ryan, thanks so much for being a part of our time capsule. And thank you to our viewers for watching. Please make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Tune in again next week to meet another amazing addition to our time capsule.